Hi everyone, my name is Sasha Carotas Odom, and I am a teacher at Wilder Middle School in Henrico County, Virginia. And today I'm going to show you all how to teach art across the curriculum in any content or subject. First, I'm going to introduce myself. I have an undergraduate degree in fashion and theater design, particularly in costume design and fine arts. I also own an art business and a fashion business. I have a graduate degree in education, and I have taught community art, long-term subbing, and special education assistance in New York, New Jersey, and Virginia. I became a full-time teacher at Wilder Middle School in 2020. So I started last year, even though I have been teaching for a while, since 2014. So first I'm going to start talking about what is teaching art across the curriculum. It's basically applying other subjects within art to make learning more comprehensive. So usually in schools, they push either reading or math, especially schools that are trying to increase their SAT scores or their SOL scores. And a very interesting place to start with that is in art class. The students most of the time don't realize that they're learning other subjects, and sometimes they do. It might be a bit of a shock to them, but it does make learning more comprehensive, and it helps them to understand the subject a little bit better. Why do we teach art across the curriculum, and why did I get started? Well, it was first recommended to me while I was at Lucille Brown Middle School by my mentor, Miss Kim Town. She is also an art teacher. I did long-term subbing for her, and she suggested that I get with the science teacher and do a collaboration. And it was so successful that I decided to use other subjects. And it's now very prevalent in Wilder Middle School, where I teach now, to use cross-curriculum studies. And it's also taught in colleges as well. It does increase student interest in both art and the subject that's being taught with it, and it makes learning increases student learning in the content subject. It makes learning all subjects more comprehensive and more fun, so they're less likely to tune out when they're learning math, English, science, social studies, and other electives. All right, so today I'm going to talk about 3 types of cross-curriculum planning. 1 is content dedicated, 2 is teacher collaboration planning, and the 3rd is existing content planning. And then I'm going to show you some student and idea examples, and there will be a couple of interactives at the end of the slides for you to give me some feedback of what you have experienced or would like to experience as far as cross-curriculum planning. All right, let's get into it. So the first one is teacher collaboration. Teacher collaboration is collaboration with a content teacher. So you're planning with another teacher. My example was doing a paper doll costume. So I was working with the theater teacher here at Wilder Middle School. And I'll talk about that project in a little bit. First, I want to show you the steps of teacher collaboration. So this is one of the examples of the project that I did with the paper doll project. We have not done it yet due to COVID. However, we do plan on doing it in the near future, more than likely next school year. But we have already planned what we were going to do for the project. So the first step is to contact and brainstorm with that teacher, either in person, on the phone, or you can contact them virtually through Microsoft Teams, Google Meet, or Zoom. Okay, but the point is you want to contact them directly and brainstorm and come together with ideas of what both classes or that teacher and you can do with your class, but the teacher is involved in some form or fashion. In this instance, we were both classes are involved. So the second step is come up with ways both classes can use the project, whether it's the same project or you're doing it in parts or consecutively. Another idea is for one of the teachers to go to the other classroom and contribute the lesson in their content. So for instance, the theater teacher can come into my classroom and teach about how to put an outfit together and what fabrics goes with what play that they're doing or something like that. So that would be the teacher collaboration. The third step would be to decide how the project and the supplies will be divided. Who's going to provide the supplies? Who's going to create the assignment? Is it going to be 50-50? Are you going to create the art portion or both portions and the other teacher provide the supplies? So that's up to you and the teacher to decide who's going to provide what. The fourth step is to come up with a schedule that coincides with both classes and both teachers, you and the other teacher. So you will get together and figure out what blocks or periods you're going to teach the class, what days, what weeks, how long is it going to be, things like that. How comprehensive will the lesson be? Is it going to be a simple lesson? So is your class going to do it for 3 days and that teacher's class do it for 3 days? Or are they going to do it together in one classroom? So those are the things that you're going to schedule with the other teacher. So it's a pure collaboration, right? Then you're going to start teaching. So you'll come up with your lesson plan together, your supplies, the assignments, how you're going to grade it, your scheduling, and then you're going to start teaching. And always make sure to make it fun for the students. So you always want to make sure you know what your students are looking for in an assignment, so they are less likely to pay attention to the fact that they are learning a content or a subject, but they're having a good time and it's very interactive. Okay. Here I'm going to talk about how we planned to do the paper doll costume project. So the theater teacher, Ms. Hughes, we came together and we talked via Microsoft Teams, because that's what we use here in Henrico County. And I was asked to come up with a way to collaborate how to incorporate art and theater together. And what we both decided was that we were going to do paper dolls. I actually have a background in costume art and design. So I do have some leftover fabrics and specialty papers for the students to use. So we got inspired by that and came up with a lesson. So we agreed that the art students would do the paper dolls. So the art students are going to learn about proportion, how to do a croquis, which is basically the outline of the body that will be used for all garments. And they will put the dolls together and have them ready for the theater students to use. So the theater students would learn how to do costume design and basic construction. Now, it won't be 3D construction per se. However, at least they would understand how costumes come together, whether they're using a script or a storyline. They will learn about seasons, props, things like that. Okay, we eventually will put our schedules together and decide whether the students will do the project together or sequentially. Eventually, I do believe, depending on student interest, we may have the students do both the paper doll and the costumes if they're that interested in it. Or we will just have the art students do the paper dolls, and then they give their paper dolls or copies of their paper dolls to the theater students, and the theater students would come up with pieces based on a script or a story. Okay. The supplies are already provided, and the students will get to learn and be creative, right? So I personally know that this is something that they would be interested in, and Ms. Hughes agrees. So it's completely collaborative. It's not me telling her what I want to do, and it's not her telling me what she wants to do, but we're both collaborating on the project. All right, the next step is, not the next step, but the next example of cross-curriculum planning is existing content. Existing content is using a lesson that was already done with another class. So you're not technically collaborating with that teacher, but you're using work that they've done with their students that you have in that class. So most of my students have the same subject teacher, or at least they're on the same project for the most part. If not, I can still use it. If the majority of the students have the work, I can have the students that haven't done it do a small portion of it so they don't have to reinvent the wheel. But it's usually a lesson that they've already done that you are using. Okay. The example that I did back in 2015 was the art style birds, and I will talk about that in a little bit. So here's the example of the project that I did. Okay. So we did bird art. The example on the right side is the actual learning content, and then the one on the left is the art project, and I'll talk about it on the next slide. But we'll go over the steps of how my process of doing existing content. So the first thing you're going to do is contact the teacher and then ask that teacher what the students are currently working on or what they've completed. So you'll be using a work that that teacher has graded already. And then you're going to collect the original or get copies of the assignments from those students. So you're usually the teacher that's going to give you those assignments. You'll let the students know ahead of time that they'll be using a project that they've done before, because they will get ready in their minds knowing that they're going to use information that they've gone over before. It is best to use a project that they've done recently so they don't have to relearn, so the information is still fresh in their minds. The third step is you're going to brainstorm independently ways to incorporate a new art project with that assignment that was given to you. Okay, so you're using the existing assignment to create a new art project. Okay, then you're going to create your schedule and decide, and this is the lesson plan portion. So you're going to decide how many class blocks or class periods you're going to do the project for, how much you're going to incorporate the existing assignment. Are you going to use it for review, or are you actually making it part of your project? You have to decide what kind of supplies you might need. And if there's any new information that you need to introduce to the students, because the fifth step is you start teaching and you make it fun. Okay, so I'm going to go into the process that I went through with this project on my following slide. Okay, so the first thing I did was contacted the science teacher, and I asked what the students were working on. And he gave me their graded bird paper packets. So they were studying birds, and they did some fun facts about the birds, their geographical location, characteristics of that bird, things of that nature. And what I had them do was do a little bit more research on the birds. So they had to look up the bird, draw that bird realistically as possible, and then give me visual observations about that bird. So on the left, you'll notice that there's a lot of writing on the bird. That's giving information about that bird. What are the personality traits they think the bird would have? What do they think about the bird? How does the bird make them feel? So it's somewhat research-based, and it's somewhat cognitively, creatively based. The last thing I did was actually introduce an art lesson within that. So after they did their research project, I taught them several art styles. So I taught them folk art and what that would look like. I gave them several examples on a sheet of paper, surrealism and Zentangle. And I told them to choose only one art style for their project. They were allowed to change their minds if it got a little too complex for them. Most people chose surrealism and Zentangle. So here you see Zentangle. Oh, I also introduced pointillism as well. So the one on the top is pointillism. So they were free. It was a free choice project in a way. All right, so my final type of cross-curriculum planning is content dedicated. This is the one I actually enjoy the most because you can go as far as you want with this type, and it's independently based. So you can pretty much do whatever you want. It's free range within that subject and the art field. So content dedicated planning is when you plan independently and incorporate other contents in your lesson. So you're not collaborating with another teacher, you're not getting assignments from another teacher, it's all based on you. It's art-based, but you're using a subject heavily from another content. It doesn't have to be from a previous class. They honestly don't even have to have been introduced to it before because you're going to teach it. Okay. My first time doing content dedicated lessons was a country and currency project, and I'll talk about that as well. Okay, this was social studies. All right, so this is not technically the worksheets that I used. I do not have my worksheets uploaded into my computer, but these are very close examples of worksheets that I used. You can get these from Teachers Pay Teachers. I did get this information. I bought it from Teachers Pay Teachers. One of them is a free download. The other one was 99 cents. I did not list the links, but I will if you need me to list them, the links of how to find these worksheets. And then at the bottom is an example. But I'll get more into detail on my next slide. But I do want to go over the steps on how to do content dedicated lessons. So the first thing you're going to do is choose what content or subject you're going to cover within your art project. What's most important is the subject or the content. The art project can always change, but you want to make sure that what you're teaching the students as far as content does not change. So in this instance, it's going to be very rich with that subject. For instance, you want to make sure you have vocabulary. You want to make sure they have basic knowledge that they need to know and some analytical skills and ability to label and talk about what they're doing. So your basic subject/content knowledge building skills before you even get to the art portion. Okay, step 2, you want to create a content-based lesson. So in this point in your lesson plan, you're going to decide, okay, what are they going to learn within that content? So specifically social studies wise, what am I going to teach the students and how am I going to get them to remember what they need? Because that is the information they will need for their art project. And I would show them the end result of the art project because it will keep them driven and motivated to want to do the subject-based lesson first because they need that to move on to the next step. And some of them might fight you on it, but that's okay. The third step is then you're going to create an art project to supplement that content lesson. Okay, how are they going to show that they learned the information visually and make it fun and interactive? All right, and in the fourth step, you're going to teach the content-based lesson first, along with the assignment that goes with it, just to make sure that they are grasping the information that you're giving to them. And then the last step, you're going to teach the art project, make it fun, and then make sure that both of the content-based lesson and the art project are intertwined so they can grasp what they have learned. So I'm going to take you into the project. So the first thing I did was decide what I wanted to teach them. So I wanted them to learn about currency. So it's more about currency than it is about the country. Okay, so what they did first is learned, identified, and labeled the parts of an actual bill and coined currency. So I downloaded many examples of actual bills from all around the world and all different currencies. We even learned current currency rates compared to the United States. So there's a little bit of math in there as well. And I had them switch back and forth. How much yen would it take to make $1, and so on and so forth. So all bills and all coins have something in common, and that's what we went over first. So it was really a currency project than anything. And then I gave them a small quiz. They had to label the important parts of a bill and the important parts of a coin. After that, I had them create their own imaginary country, and they really appreciated it. They had a lot of fun with it. They could call their country whatever name they wanted, but they did have to have the important parts of the bill and the coin listed in their country, and it could be made up. So they had to have an important building, an important event, a leader of some sort. They had to have a name for the currency, a name for their country, what the currency rate was. So, for instance, if they have one snickerdoodle equals 1.5 snickerdoodles equals $1. So it's always related to a US dollar. Okay. Then the third step, I had them plan a design for their bill. So I gave them a worksheet with a rectangle and a circle. And they had about 2 or 3 rectangles and 2 circles. And they had to give multiple designs of what they would like their bill to look like, but they had to have the labels, like the number delineation of how much that bill was worth. They had to have the leader or a celebrity or some kind of important figure or symbol. They had to have either a building or an important event on their bill, things like that, that's directly related to what they studied with their currency. Okay, so all of this is interrelated. And the final step was they actually chose one of their projects, their designs, and they created the bill. So I gave them a rectangle, and they either use marker and watercolor or both to create their bill, back and front. And for the coin, they did bas relief. So I did teach them what bas relief was, and I taught them a little bit about watercolor as well. And some of them had previous knowledge because this was towards the end of the school year that I taught this. It was in the last 9 weeks. But I used clay, and so it was a 4-part project, but they really enjoyed it and they had fun with the project. So I think it took about 2 to 3 weeks that they did this project, but they were very motivated and they learned a lot. And that's one of the reasons why I prefer content dedicated over the other 2, even though they are all very good types of cross-curriculum planning. All right, so let's review a little bit. So teacher collaboration is when you collaborate with another teacher to create a lesson in a project. An existing content is when you use an assignment from another teacher to create a new art project. So you're using student projects from something they've done before to create something new to further their learning. And content dedicated is start to finish, it's independently created, it's content-based, and it's an art assignment that you are teaching to them. It's very important that everyone knows that all contents and subjects can be used in planning art projects. So you can use cross-curriculum planning in any subject that is taught at your school. All right, so here are some content-based art ideas. The one on the far left is a geometry and perspective project. So you get a front view, which is like I'm looking straight at it, top view or bird's eye view, and a side view. This is usually used in architectural planning or engineering. And then you have your 3D model using the dot matrix. And it helps them with their visual orientation. And they also learn math, because you do learn blocks in math class. The second one is English class. So you have onomatopoeia and pop art. I actually did this with some students. This is an example of a student project. So I taught them what onomatopoeia was first, and they came up with sound words. Some of them were a little shocked that I introduced English into art class, but they ended up really enjoying it in the end. And then I taught this, I've already taught them about pop art, so this was review for them because they were introduced to pop art already. Some of them did this on paper, and some of them did the project digitally because we were virtual. However, they all seem to have grasped the concept of sound words, which is onomatopoeia. The next one is Native American women. We did a lesson on the history and design of different Native American women. It was Native American History Week. And first we did a lesson, which the link is there if you're interested. We did a lesson on an art exhibit that the Native American women have done. And all of their work was there, and they interviewed some of them, and there was a video about it. And they had to write information about what they saw. And some of them were exposed to things that they've never seen before, and they were very interested. Then they had to take that information and use the designs from the artwork that they saw, and that culture. They had to stay true to the culture and use those designs to incorporate in either a shoe design, pottery, or a rug, because that's what those Native Americans have done. Okay, I also have a link to the art project there if you are interested in that. Next, there's the science project. It's a double helix sculpture art. With this, you can get very creative depending on what your students are interested in or what their skill level is. The most basic thing that they could do is using beads and wire. So they'll actually learn how to use an armature and not realize that they're learning how to use an armature or a thick wire, and beads. And this is the link to the video on how to do it. And then you can teach them or ask their teacher if they've already learned about double helix or DNA. All right, the next one is language arts. So they can create a comic strip either in a foreign language or based on that country's culture. We have Spanish at our school. So I am actually introducing the students to a site called Pixton. In Pixton, you can make your own comics, and they have all of the artwork there for you. You just put it together, and they have scenes that you can choose from. You can make your own characters and put them together. It's almost like making I forgot what you call the characters that most teachers make for themselves, but they make it in Pixton. And it's very fun and interactive, and you can create word bubbles, and you can do it in a foreign language, or you can do it in English, but based on the characteristics of that culture or in a cultural event. And there's a link to the article that talks more about Pixton for anyone who is interested. And finally, I talk about the paper doll project, but this one is more specific. So it's a Velcro paper doll project. I actually personally did this project. This is not my project, but I did it in college, where you can change the outfits on that doll. So the doll is affixed to the board, and you change the outfits on that particular character within that script. And the outfits are based on the script and that particular character. So I have a link to the first article, which shows you how to create a paper doll. And then link to the second article is how to create that project that you see there. And you can do this with any elective content. You can use it with music, dance, there's business, and career and technical education. Okay? So that in itself is what everything that covers cross-curriculum education and planning. Now I'm going to ask for you to put in your feedback. So can you think of any lesson that you can incorporate into another content? Okay, so click on this link and write some ideas there on Padlet. And I'm very interested to see what you come up with. And also other teachers can get to see collaboratively what everyone is thinking about, and maybe you all can come up with something very inspirational or inspire each other. In the Padlet link, I have it separated by subject, just to make it a little easier. If someone's looking for something math related, they can go to that Padlet link and get inspired. And finally, I have another Padlet interactive for you, asking, have you done a cross-curriculum project? So is there a collaboration that you've done? Is there something you've done with students' work from a previous class that they've had outside of your class? Or did you visit another person's class and do a master class with them? Or did you come up with a cross-curriculum based art project for your students from start to finish? So click on that link as well. You can do both, or you can just do one. And I hope that it motivates and inspires all of you to come up with some amazing projects for your students and even for yourself, because then you get to learn about what your students are interested in outside of art as well. All right, everybody, thank you very much for listening to my small class about cross-curriculum lesson planning. If you have any questions, or if you need to reach me for any reason, you can message me at secodom@henrico.k12.va.us. You can also find more ideas on Google, Pinterest, Teachers Pay Teachers, and the OATK12 Facebook group. That's usually where I find most of my ideas or inspirations. And I hope that you have fun finding them there as well. Thank you, everyone. Bye now.